You guys can take a seat. Thank you, worship team. Beautiful time, beautiful time. Hey, Rock Springs, have I told you lately that I love you? Because I do. Love you so much. I want God's very best for you. Before we jump into this last episode of 10, let's turn that down just a smidge, because I'm about to get loud. Yeah. So many cool things start to happen as the summer approaches, and I just want you to be aware of them so that you can reserve a spot on your calendar, because Lord knows we're all busy, but I would certainly encourage you to prioritize these things. Come May 31st, which is going to be a Sunday, we are going to have our regularly scheduled worship experience. After the worship experience, we're going to have a Rock Springs church family potluck. Where I come from, in the South, if you had a fifth Sunday, you'd have dinner on the ground. We're not going to do that. I mean, I guess we're going to be on the grounds, but we'll be in the building. We'll have fun. It's going to be a true potluck, so here's the instructions. You bring stuff that your family likes, enough for your family, plus 2. And that way, we may have like tons of dessert. I mean, it could be a potluck dessert. That's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it could turn out that way. But not going to be any like, maneuvering, pulling the levers. Let's just see what we can do. But in addition to the food, and that will be fun, and I hope that you will participate in that. These are great times to get to know other people, just connect. We're also going to have a family chat. Going to talk about what's happening with Operation Handoff, but we've also got some really cool things that are happening in the background that I want to tell you a little bit more about as well. In fact, I'll just go ahead and give you a hint on another one. We have been given an opportunity to open our own food pantry by way of our campus here, and that's in the works, and it's accelerating. I'm just telling you. I actually had to do physical labor this week. That's how dramatic that was. So, yeah. It literally is a Mother's Day miracle, isn't it? Yeah. No, please prioritize that. It'll be right after the service. We'll meet in the South Auditorium. We'll have a good time. Another one that I have on my list is Vacation Bible School, also known as VBS. Man, RSK volunteers, VBS volunteers are stoked about this one. I think it's called Kingdom Quest. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be June the 23rd, 24th, 25th. Please put that on your calendar. We'll begin registration before long. We want to make sure that we have everything we need for all the kids that can attend. The other thing is, and may I have my cards, please? Thank you, my dear.
You're welcome.
I couldn't find anything if it weren't for you. I'll say at the house, where is it? And I'll look all around, and she'll walk into the next room. It's like, right here on top. There it is, right there. Okay, we do not need amens yet. This card is not just for your entertainment. It is actually an advertisement promo, because we do want to promote what's going on in the kingdom of God. We're going to stick around a little bit more in Exodus, and we're going to look at the tabernacle. You go, is this really important to my life? You'd be surprised. On the back side, it says, why would God want a tent? We will see why. But if you have some people in your life that you go, I don't do church, well, tell them they should do church this time, because it's going to be fun. And we will learn a lot about Jesus. I also want to draw your attention to this. This is a new habit for us. This response card gives us an opportunity to share some prayer requests if you need to. And we had about 20 different prayer requests this past week. So we think opening up that channel was huge. But if you have an update to your contact information, we'd like to know about that. If you're new to us, we'd love to know that you were here. And you could fill that out. And it even has a little spot that says, this is my first time. And if you came as a guest of someone, we'd love to know that too. We're not going to come to your door and hound you for anything. Just want to open up a way for us to talk. If you do decide on making a choice, we've got different ones, my decision, I'm committing my life to Christ for the first time, I want to be baptized, or I'd like to start a habit of a daily Bible reading, or maybe I would like to start receiving that 3 before they talk about. Please put that on there. You say, how do I get it back to you? Well, as I told you last week, and if you weren't here, we are going to begin, or we did begin, and will continue a time in each of our services in which we have a time of giving. You can give online. That's how I actually give. And I get a response to it every Sunday, and I get to thank God that I'm able to give. And I hope that if you're a part of Rock Springs, you'll do that too, because giving God the first and best of what he's allowed you to earn is a beautiful way of worship. Those moms were talking about raising kids as worship. Giving is worship as well. But I also want to talk to you if you're a first-time guest or a fifth-time guest and you don't consider yourself a part of Rock Springs yet. You're under no obligation to give. We're going to pass some offering bags later in the service. What I'd invite you to do is, even if this is your very first time, fill this out. Put it in the offering bag when it comes by. Everybody, please participate in. He's like, I didn't fill anything out on my card. Cool. Put it in the bag. We will save some trees, okay? That was supposed to be funny, but everybody gets so serious about stuff like that. My goodness. Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal. We've been in a series that we've been calling 10. 10 words for free people. We've covered a lot of ground. I just think it's very interesting when you talk to people and they go, I think the 10 Commandments are out of date, or the Bible, it's just a bunch of myths. And when I hear people say that, I usually know they haven't actually read the Bible, because if you read it and see how cohesive it is, it's amazing that it was written over a 1,300-year time span and 3 different continents, 40 different writers, and yet it has one cohesive message that leads to Jesus Christ. So in the beginning, obviously we got these back here. I don't know if you can see them from there, but up there, this is our library of the Bible, because that's what it is. It's not a book, it's a library. And the library, first part of the library, has to do with the history of the nation of Israel and the remarkable things that happened to them. And they took on significance because of one man, and his name is Jesus of Nazareth. Anyway, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Pentateuch, the Tanakh, the books of Moses. It has lots of different titles, but Genesis is the book of beginnings. Exodus is when they left Egypt. That's where we are, and we'll camp out a little bit more there with hey, that's a play on words. Camp out a little bit, because we're going to camp out with God during the Tabernacle series. All of that is a setup for what's coming, and we've already touched on that, and that is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John's story of Jesus. If you keep in mind that all of it is one cohesive story that leads, one unified story that leads to Jesus, then this book, this library starts to make sense. Which I was feeling a little bit nostalgic. How many of you have ever had Altoids? You remember when they came out? Like they were, I see some of my young friends going, no, and I think he's like in his mid-30s. You don't remember when these came out? What's the matter? I'm like, how old am I? I remember when they came out, and if you've never had one, it even says it right here on the label, if you can get a shot of that. It says, curiously strong. That's an understatement. I'm going to take one. I'm going to see if my head explodes. Curiously strong meant, breathtaking even. The 10. They're curious. They're curiously strong. Here's what I mean is that if you go back into history, not even just talking Bible history, I'm going back in world history, the 10 Commandments, the 10 words as they are actually translated, the 10 words were curious. There was nothing like it. You can go and look in all the other existing nations, tribes, and people groups. There's nothing like it. Absolutely nothing like it. They were so different. They were curious, and they were extremely strong. We've been seeing that. Well, this is getting, my sinuses are opening up right before our very eyes. Wow. So you go back and you look, well, what led to that? Well, if we go back in Genesis, we see, well, it was Adam and Eve, and this thing called sin entered the picture. It was a huge mess. It's kind of like, I don't know about you guys, but I have to have Tabasco on practically everything. And we buy it in the big bottle, the big one, and it's glass. I'm just telling you, do not drop that thing on a tile floor. because you will have two options. Get some professional help, counseling, or you will need to move to another house. That's what you will need to do. That's the kind of mess that sin brought into the world. So God was in a situation, I don't know if God can be in a situation, but you follow where I'm going with this. God wanted us as human beings to be together with him. That's what the garden not only represents, but what it was. The garden was lost because of sin, but we have a gracious God that told us to get out, because if we'd stayed there, then we'd have been locked into a horrible disconnect from God. But he had to start a cleanup process. And it took a while. Went to Noah, and then God found a man by the name of Abraham. And he said, I'm going to do something in you because you have just the simple trust and faith in me. I'm going to use you, as unlikely as you are, and we're going to get back to the garden. We will get back that. He set in motion that all the world's families, including yours and mine, would be blessed. That we could know him again and that we could have fellowship with him again. And then to take this out to its final conclusion, which never ends, is that we get to be back with God in a garden. We refer to it as heaven, but it's like, wow, get to be back face to face with God. How beautiful is that? So you got Abraham, you got Noah, you got Abe. Abraham did have a son who started this next thing, and that would be Isaac. And then he had a son, and his name was Jacob, and Jacob was a handful. And God wrestled with him, and he wrestled with God and changed his name, changed his direction, dislocated his hip. He never walked the same again. Then there was this guy, Joseph, and Joseph got some real influence in the world and moved to Egypt. Then he moved his family to Egypt. And then there was a situation in which relationships changed, and a pharaoh or a king, a guy who was in charge, didn't know Joseph, didn't know the history, and he started enslaving the people that this family comprised. But God wasn't done, so he chose that family, and he said, what I need is a leader. So he chose a guy by the name of Moses, who was also flawed, just like you and me. And he said, I need you to lead, and I need you to go to the most powerful man on earth, and I need you to tell him to let my people go. And he did, and Pharaoh said, no, until he finally said yes, reluctantly. But Moses leads them out. Maybe you've seen the movie on that one. You can read the source material. It's all there. He chose these people, and he asked them to trust him. God did. And through Moses, he said, this is what I need you to do. On the night this is all going to go down, I need you to have a dinner party. And the dinner party needs to involve lamb. And it will be a lamb that you and your family have chosen, and you will slaughter it. And the blood will become very important to this. But don't forget what this meal includes. Eat it quickly because we're about to leave. But he said you need to take some of the blood of that lamb and put it around the doorframe of your house, so that when the death angel comes through, he will see that the blood has been shed, and I will pass over that house. You say, why are you telling us all this? Because I told you a minute ago, if you remember that the story is about Jesus, you are getting so many Easter eggs and clues all along the way. So if you ever hear us singing about the Lamb of God, the idea started at Passover, but it was completed in Jesus. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. When you talk about the tabernacle, we'll actually be talking about Jesus, but don't tell anybody I said that, okay? God made the choosing. God did the setting free, because within a day or so, they were free. After 400 years of slavery, they were free. But they were also, 400 years of slavery had made them, we don't really even know who we are. They weren't a nation. They were just a group of people who were all related. So God chose them, and he leads them into and toward a new promised land. But there's a lot to be cleaned up. There's a lot to happen in all of this situation. So he's providing for them, because, you can only carry so much in your backpack or your lunchbox. He fed them. He made water in the desert. It's an amazing story. You should read it for yourself. That's when, because he's already chosen them, he's already provided for them, and now he brings them to this Mount Sinai, and he talks to Moses and says, I have some rules, and I have some commandments. I have these words that I want you to know, because these words are not given to you in order to, they're not given as a condition of our relationship. We already have a relationship. I established that. I love you. I have drawn you to myself. I have set you free. They're not a condition for us to have a relationship, as in, you keep these 10 and then you can be on my good side. No, they are a confirmation of a relationship that already existed. Because, as I've said in every one of these messages, you can tell a lot about a person by the rules that they give. And you can tell a lot about a person by who they give those rules to. Over these weeks that we've been looking at this, I've told you about my dog. And his name is Bodie. And I think he's awesome. He is a lot, I will tell you that. He's 11 months old, 79 pounds, and full of vim, vigor, and vitality. One of my close friends said I should bring him and show him off. I don't think that would go well. I really don't. But we're going to try. We'll see how that goes. I built a fence because I love him, and I don't want him playing out in traffic. I built the fence and essentially gave him the rule that he has to stay in the fence because I love him. You can tell a lot about a guy by the rules he makes and who he gives those rules to. This is what I'm wanting you to understand, because we have discovered some things along the way, but we have one more discovery to make. When these words were spoken, like I said, they're so curiously strong. They're so odd. They do not exist in any other form, in any other nation. That's one of these reasons why I believe that there is a God and he's up to something. Is that he starts off these 10 words, and his first word is essentially, listen to me, I am the one and I am the only God. You may have made up all kinds of stuff, or you may have been taught or conditioned to believe all these other things, but trust me on this one, I am the one and only. I am the one and only, and the teaching from it that we talked about, and you can go pick this up on the archives on the Church Center app, is that you need to put me at the front and the center of everything that you do. Everything that you do. First part of your day, first part of your income, first part of your week. You need to make me first and foremost because I am the one and only. Is that because God is just full of himself? No, it's because he understands that since we are a reflection of him, a creation, we bear his thumbprint on everyone you lock eyes with is a reflection of God, of his creation. He says, life does not work well if you do not keep me in that position of being front and center. There is no other. Second word he gave, he said, don't make little versions of me. Don't try to make me into an idol. Many people have said, well, it means don't have little other idols of other gods. No, we've already established that. There is no other God. He said, don't make any idols because you cannot contain me. I am unmanageable. Don't try to manage me, but turn your life around to where you say, God, you are the one and only, and I will allow you to manage me. Because if you try to put God in a box, he gets out. I'm just telling you. Third word, he said, don't use my name for your game. Don't use the God card in order to qualify or quantify something you want to do that I have no business or interest in being a part of. It is my name. It is holy. It is set apart. It is like no other name because I am the one and only. I am not manageable, and do not use my name for your game. And then the fourth one that we talked about last week, and boy, did I have a lot of people come and ask me questions on that one. Number 4 is take a day off every week in order to remember who is your source. Don't forget, what was happening with them is they were living at a time in which there was no refrigeration. It was always hand to mouth. And he said, God had the unmitigated gall to say, don't work on that seventh day. Why? Because he said, I want you to give yourself to work. It's a noble thing. Give yourself to work for 6 days, but you need to trust me that I will provide for you for 7 days. And that's where I got a lot of, like, well, preacher, what about this? What about this? I'm like, I get it. All of us have like our, buts. But I'm telling you, if he said it, I think we ought to try and live that way. And Jesus upheld. Here's something to remember. If you're still wrestling with that, Jesus clarified it by saying, the Sabbath was made for humans, for man, for people. People were not made for the Sabbath. In other words, God's not trying to hurt you. He's trying to bless you. He's like, well, it doesn't feel like a blessing. I get it. Usually, I told you this early on, if you're worshiping a God that you always agree with, you're probably not worshiping the real God. Just take that into account. Okay, so last Sunday we tried to connect our heart with these first 4 words because, like I said, you can live the call of the wild, but be very careful. If you are in the God seat, it's not going to take you where you want to go. And I'm saying, if you have that Mustang heart, let God put you inside his fence. You will be free. Now, if those of you who's like, that's all I need, I'm going to go to sleep, great. Listen to this before you go to sleep, okay? These words turn, because we dealt with 4 of them, these words turn to focus on all the people around us. Because the first 4 were focused on God. Now these next 6, in one way or another, talk about others. And how do we bless them? God, in essence, says, listen to me first. I want you to honor me. And then, don't stop. Honor everybody else around you. You need to treat them right. Everybody. We say it around here. If you've been a part of the membership class, I certainly go into this more deeply. What Jesus summed up with all of this, he said, you need to love God and you need to love people. That's the essence of what this is all about. You love God, you love people. They are part and parcel. They are together. We say it all around Rock Springs over and over again. Again, curiously strong, which this is still curiously strong. This may last the whole message. Back to historical. This was 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago. And if you stop and look at what was happening in the world 3,300 years ago, this was unique. No one had ever said this. It was so new, it was so different that these people, the people of God, the Israelites, they had a hard time coping with this. They had a hard time rearranging and recalibrating their life around it, because the only known order up until that time, history teaches us, was might makes right. That's the way it worked. It was always good to be the king, a chieftain, a king, an emperor, a monarch, pharaoh, men who thought they were a god. There was no this idea of calibrating to there is a God that we cannot see and we need to, order our life around him. No, the guy in charge. Might makes right. See, listen to me. Don't tune me out. Because if you're in that position, if you're in that seat, if you have that kind of authority, you get to make the rules. And it's awesome as long as you're the king. You can do whatever you want, because up until that time, everybody understood that kind of power meant that you were above the law. Whatever the law was, because you could say what the law was. You could say the law is this. And then you could the next day say, we're just going to break that one. Or I'm going to break that one. You guys have to keep doing it. Might makes right. You could make it, change it, ignore it. And here's the other thing that happened back in those days, and you can see it for yourself. If you live close enough to the chieftain, to the king, to the pharaoh, then you have influence. In fact, if you've got some moolah, Let's make it rain up in here. Here's the thing. This is the thing. That guy, that girl could get close to the king and they could leverage the Pharaoh's power because money bought access to power. So it wasn't only good to be the king, it was good to be friends with the king. And that power brought more leverage with the law and also against the law. That's the way the world worked. But you do the math, if you're lower down on the food chain, this is not happening for you. You have way less options. And now that I get to thinking about it, not a whole lot has changed about human behavior over 3,300 years, because you can read through history. This cycle repeats itself. That's the way it was then. That's the way it is now. Unless you go back. I'm the only one. Don't try to manage me. Don't use my name for your game. And you need to understand I am your source. So, as the Bible often says, but God. Seemingly, from our point of view, all of a sudden, God says to Moses, that's not the way it's going to be in my land. That is not the way it's going to be with my people. I have called you out. You are different. You're my nation. You're my people. And it's not going to be that way in my economy of things. Because I'm about to set you up and you're not going to have any kings. You're not going to have any pharaohs. You're not going to have any monarchs. You're not going to have any of that with special rights. And you know what? There's not going to be a holy man that has special privileges that are exclusive to him and not to the rest of you. And there's not going to be a ruling class that makes all the rules. And there's not going to be a lawmaker who then turns around and says, I'm above the laws that I just made. I'm not going to have that. So, long and the short of it is, these next 6, God said, I'm telling you, you can't steal from anybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you got. I don't care how much you don't have. You can't steal from anybody. And he also says, and you can't take another man's wife or another woman's husband. And I don't care how powerful you are. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how sexy you think you are. And you know what? You can't lie about your neighbor. I'm not going to have any of that. Because these laws that I'm about to give you that apply to all of you, it applies to all of you. Everybody's on equal footing. Everybody in this new nation, this community that I am forming, is going to be accountable to me. And he says, listen, the reason I'm saying this is because everybody, you guys as well as the Egyptians you brought with you and the people you're going to meet, everybody has value. Men, women, even the slaves, all of that. We're going to work all that out. Big cleanup project. Why? Because every single one of them is made in my image. I'm trying to get us back to something that was so screwed up by sin. And he says to them, you know what? I've designed you for this, and that's where I want us to go. Again, Altoids may be breathtakingly strong. I'm just saying. What I just explained to you in 1300 BC, it's crazy. It is crazy. It's so different. It's so breathtaking, so mind-blowing. And yet, if you were here with us or you tuned in last Sunday and talked about the call of the wild and the Mustang spirit, here's the deal, is that you can know that, but knowing it and doing it are two different things. Because even with the wisdom that God was giving them, and even with the experience that God had literally parted the Red Sea, he had provided them with manna, he had provided them with protein, he had made water come from a rock, he established all of these things in front of him, they didn't manage to keep their eye on the prize. And they started doing what they always did. It's the gravity of our depravity. We go back to what we once were. Can you imagine having experienced all that? And then sometimes whenever things were tough, they'd actually grumble and complain to Moses and said, we should just all go back to Egypt. What's the matter with you? Did your mama drop you on your head when you were little? Because they didn't keep their eyes on the prize, and it didn't take them long before they were saying, you know what? This was all fun and games, but we want a king. Because everybody else has got a king. Have you ever raised teenagers, any of you? Have you ever heard a version of that? Well, I got to have one of those because everybody's got one. Okay, well, same thing. And God would say, no, listen. I know what's happening in the future, and here's how it could go down, is that you're going to get some success, this little sliver of land, and all these people that live in it, you're going to have some might, you're going to have some influence, people will come to you for wisdom, and what I want others to see when they come and visit you is, you don't have a king, because I'm your king. And they're going to say, what is that? How does that work? And that's when you say, because God is our king. God is our emperor, our monarch, the one who's in charge. We don't need any, we all respond to him. And he was like, can you see the beauty in that? He's like, that's why I established these laws. That's why I gave you the first 4. And if you will obey those laws, then people will see that obedience to me will lead to success that others can never achieve. But yet they go, la, 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 la. And he's like, we don't care. Everybody else has got one. We want a king. Give us a king. And then God would lean in their direction and say, but listen. If you get a king, you're going to get some king troubles that come with it. He will think he's above the law. You'll get a class system. There's going to be oppression. There's going to be abuse of power. There's going to be pain. And you'll be right back where you started to might makes right. And they go, well, whatever. Still want one. That's so, like you do with your teenagers. He's like, okay. Give you enough rope, you'll hang yourself. And you know what? He gave them that, and guess what happened? Exactly what God said. And that's why I think these 10 words are so brilliant, so unique, so significant, so curiously strong. This was one of those defining moments in all of humanity, because nothing's been the same since this happened. And this is why even as a society today, we debate, we argue over where does this fit, because everything that you and I really understand about how to be a people, how to be a nation, all of those things actually stem from this moment in time. Because if you and I stop and think about it, when you understand that the law that actually matters, this law is established by God. When you grasp the truth, not only with your head but your heart, that there is a divine, holy, loving, gracious, just, divine lawmaker, that by definition means that you and I are not that lawmaker. We are to be loved people who are law keepers under the umbrella of God's divine law. If you ever grasp that, it changes everything. Everything in your life. Changes your motivations, everything. But let's come at it from a different angle, because I think we got a little serious and some of you need a comic book, I think. Here's the thing. Some rules in our life, God just said, and at least in my family, this is how we do it. God said so. I mean, I never really talked to my family that way, but God said so. For instance, God said, thou shalt not lie. I think that's a good plan. I didn't come up with it, neither did you. God said that. Thou shalt not lie. And just because I'm a dad, and just because I'm a husband, and just because I have my responsibilities does not give me a hall pass from that particular command, that rule. Is everybody tracking with me on this? It's up here, we're down here, thou shalt not lie. In other words, it's not my rule. I'm simply here to deliver and pronounce that rule, and that's how we're going to live. But, there are some rules that I've made up, too. And I know you have too, but I'm the one with the microphone, so I'm going to tell you the ones that I make up. Okay? Thou shalt not stand at the refrigerator with the door open, drinking directly from the lemonade thing, okay? Thou shalt not do that. Number one, reason being is that that's my lemonade, and you shouldn't be touching it. But you're also, are we trying to refrigerate the whole house? Close the door. Okay, that's my. However, I will tell you, I am free at any moment, any given time, to go and stand at the refrigerator, open the door, and drink from my lemonade for as long as I want. Because that rule does not apply to me. I am the rule maker. Everyone else is the rule keeper. I can do with it what I want. Y'all, okay. You're laughing because you got your rule too. Here's another one, and Leanne knows this, even though it's just the two of us. Just the two of us. Okay. Sorry. Mind wanders a bit. Another law I have is don't mess with the thermostat. It is set that way for a reason. My reason. Okay? We even have a smart thermostat, so I can check to see if you are messing with the thermostat while I'm not there. But I'm just saying, to play this out, guess who gets to determine whether it is too hot or too cold? And you know what? I never feel guilty about that. I never pray for inner strength about it. I don't do any of those things because that law isn't for me, it's for her. And everybody else. Right? That would be a good place for you to say amen. I think you get it. But on a larger scale, you see what I'm saying? Nations, societies, people groups, communities, families live like that. You have leaders who start making up rules and they refuse to get under God's umbrella of rules. And then you start getting into chaos because might makes right. And eventually, people break their own laws when it benefits them. Sadly, they break laws and it hurts other people. And it abuses other people. And it damages relationships. And it endangers the one thing that holds it all together because we think that we are large and in charge. We think we're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. That's the ripple effect of sin. It's a human thing, and that's how you know that God is so loving, is that even though it was a disaster that sin entered the picture, he said, I love them so much, I would rather die than be without them. It's a historical fact where there is no accountability to a divine lawmaker. You wind up with poor human rights. Do your homework in history. Where there is no accountability to a divine lawmaker, you will wind up with poor human rights. But you can also find the same evidence that when a nation, a society, a people group, a family, whenever there is accountability, where there is acknowledgement of a divine lawmaker, everybody's status gets elevated. You go, well, that's a coincidence. No, it's not. That's the way life is meant to be lived. So, the 10 words for free people, they are God-given. They were and they are brilliant. They were certainly unheard of at the time. But here's another interesting fact, and I don't have time to belabor it, but the next time you see the application of this concept that I have just taken a long time describing to you, the next time in history this showed up was in 1776. In 1300 BC, it was so different, it was so uncomfortable. Israel, they had their chance. They let it slip away. They lost sight of something that was so essential. But I'm here to tell you, I truly believe, having lived my 65 years, same thing's happening in the U.S., and not exclusively in the U.S., but it's happening here. It's like a slow-moving train wreck. Because God continues to be frozen out or ushered out of the discussions about how we are to live, not only in response to Him, but how we are supposed to live with each other. Because our culture has bought into the lie that it's all about us. And it's not about us. But carnage is real. I sit on the front lines of it as a pastor. It's very sad. It is tragic. It is costly. But listen to me. The value of the 10 commandments, the value of the 10 words in our culture is not the commandments. It's not about you memorizing them, although you'd do yourself a favor if you did. You can read the rest of Exodus, and we're going to deal with a little bit of that in this Tabernacle series. There are a lot of additional laws, 603 of them to be exact, other daily laws that were very specific to Israel and how they had to keep themselves healthy and clean, all those things. There are a lot of those that are irrelevant because they don't apply anymore. There's technically no way that we could apply them. The value of the 10 to us is the recognition that there is a divine lawgiver to whom we are all accountable. Young and old, rich or poor, men or women, powerful, oppressed, all of us. It doesn't matter what your status is. And to the degree, listen to me, church, to the degree that we do that, everybody's status gets elevated. And to the degree we do not do that, the more that we lose. And it's just like God said over 3,000 years ago. Okay, here we go. First 4 words were focused on our relationship to God. Then the focus shifts to our relationship with other people. And he basically says, and don't skip over this. This is so simple and it's so easy. You go, that was it? Yep, that's it. God says honor other people. That's what he says. Honor other people. And the first other people isn't who I think I would have guessed. Because I would have guessed, well, maybe Moses, because he was, big and important. It's obviously not honor the king or the emperor or the pharaoh. We already established that. But look at Exodus 20, verse 12. He says, honor. Look up there or on your notes. Say it with me. Honor your father and mother. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. You go, okay, the way we're kind of taught that is that when we're little kids, you should say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, all that, and please and thank you, which I think we should return to that. It's a very good habit. But do you realize that command was given to adults? It wasn't given to kids. It's given to adults. So you go, so that. You only have 10 to work with here. We've already used up 4, and so you're going to use up number 5 for honor your father and mother. Is it really that important? He goes, it is. It's really important. It's so important that this is the only word, this is the only command that has a promise attached to it. Because he actually says, honor your father and mother so that, that's a purpose statement, so that you may live long in the land that I'm going to give you, that the Lord your God is giving to you. They had no land. They're wandering around at this point, but they had a lot of stuff that they had hauled out of Egypt when they left. They had a few leaders, little tribal leaders, because we're talking about at least 1 million people that they're dealing with. So they now have some rules, they now have some laws, but they still have no land. And God says, I'm going to give you your land. And they're going, okay, so what is that going to look like? How are you going to divvy that up? It's like, well, we'll get there. Just hold on. But he said, I want you to know that I'm going to give you land and all that comes with it. But he leans in and he says, so, listen to me. Don't you ever forget that you once were a people who had nothing. You had no land. And I'm the one who put you in that land. I promised it. That's why it's called the promised land. And if you don't, he says, listen to me, eyes up here. He's like, if you don't listen to me, if you don't honor your father and mother, I'm going to take you out of that land. I'm asking you again, as a parent, have you ever said something similar to your kids? If you don't do that, I'm going to take you out. I'm going to make another one just like you. That's what I'm going to do. But it's interesting to me, he says, I'm not going to take you out of the land because you steal or you kill or you commit adultery or any of those. No. He's like, I'm going to take you out if you don't respect your parents, if you don't understand how vital it is that your family is priority to you. And they're like, you would do that? It's like, oh, absolutely, I would do that. And then like your kids, like, why? Why? Because God knows the drift. And you never drift into better stuff. You always drift away from it. Because when you get successful, when you get more wealthy, when you get more power, we tend to drift into, man, I am all that and a bag of chips. Look at me. And that's whenever you get an attitude, especially when you're younger, you think you start to know everything in your 20s, and you look at your dad and you go, and I can just hear this conversation in some tent somewhere out there in the wilderness, like, Dad, you're so ancient. Me and my peeps, we're modern ancient, because, it's 3,300 years ago, but we're hip. God says if you start dissing your parents, it becomes so easy to abandon the values that God has given all of us to uphold. And that's when you forget the purpose that I gave you, and that is to be a reflection of me. Because you remember, if you read it, God's goal for Israel was that they would be a light to the whole world. That God was up to something good in redeeming the whole world. They were supposed to show how awesome God was and powerful and gracious and good and just. And he said, Israel, if you ever lose sight of that, I'm going to take you out. I'm going to put you in time out. I'm going to have to do something about it. Because as the family goes, so goes the nation. 3,000 years ago, God predicted it. He said, honor your dad and your mom, and if you do that, you will succeed and remain stable. But it was only a few generations later, they just abandoned all of that. They abandoned the faith, they abandoned their practice, they got themselves a king, and with it came idols and habits, because everybody around them was doing, whatever they were doing, and they started thinking, we are people of influence, we're large, we're in charge, and nobody can do anything about that, except the God who told them that he would. Because it's an amazing thing that God has so much power. He took the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Persians and then the Greeks and the Romans, and he put them in timeout until they finally would get their act together. Because, whenever a wife bites you back, and I was like, well, maybe mom and dad were right. Like, yeah. And that's when they would start worshiping God again, back the way he had intended, and then he would bring them back into the land. So it's amazing. He gives them this fifth word, and he says, honor me, honor your parents. And then he gets to the words that all of us are familiar with. Like I said, the rest of them are so easy to read. There's nothing hidden in what he's saying here. But let me just go through them. The rest of the commandments are saying, honor all the people around you, and do not rush past this, Rock Springs. Don't be confused by this simplicity, because they're very powerful. In verse 13, he says, you shall not murder. In other words, that means to honor their bodies. Don't hurt them, help them. Verse 14, you shall not commit adultery. That means honor their marriages. Because relationships and the family relationship is absolutely essential. Do not violate that. Verse 15, you shall not steal. Honor their stuff. Honor their possessions. Don't take stuff that isn't yours. Verse 16, he said, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You need to honor their reputation. Don't talk down about them, talk up about them. And remember, this is people who are living cheek to jowl with other people, 1 million of them out there in the desert. It's like Bob over, two tents down. He's starting to get on my nerves. Still, do not sully his reputation. That's the whole law. Honor God and honor people. Because God's saying you can't take advantage of whatever position or power you may have, because every single one of us, every single one of you is on equal footing. These laws apply to everybody. You put me at the center, front and center, and then honor everybody around you. Period. That's what he said. And this isn't the only time he communicated this. It's communicated consistently. This message, this truth, this principle. How you treat others and how they treat you is muy importante. Why? Because you and I have intrinsic value. Because God has made all women and all men in his image. And now, drum roll please. Number 10. This is the unenforceable commandment. In other words, you cannot police on anyone. You can't call the police on anyone for breaking this law because the act of disobeying this one is invisible. Verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. Covet, there's a good word, not one we use every day. It literally means to strongly desire or to lust after. It's just like this. You want something so much that it hurts the relationship. In other words, it's you can't get along with your sister because her house is bigger than yours. But when she loses it, you feel better about yourself. And you wonder, why does her failure make me feel so much better? It's because you were coveting. That's what coveting looks like. That's what it feels like. And he covers everything. This is verse 17. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Ha! Ah! God just put the exclamation point on this. He said, you're not just accountable to me for how you behave, you're accountable to me for how you think. You're not just accountable to me for what you do, you're accountable to me for what you're thinking about doing. Jesus echoed this, by the way, when he stood on another mount and he gave essentially what was his marching orders for the kingdom of God. And he said, hey, listen to me. He said, all of you, you've heard, do not commit adultery. He said, well, thinking about it is wrong too. You see what I'm saying? He's trapping you. And that's what he intends to do. It's because he loves you so much, he would rather die than be without you. In other words, Jesus said thinking about having an affair with a neighbor's wife is just another form of coveting. There is a thought police. It is the God of the universe. But he's not creeping on you. He's saying, don't dishonor me and don't dishonor other people. Why would God include all this stuff? Because he knows where all of it leads. Coveting leads to stealing, to adultery, to lying, to murder, to dishonoring your parents. And God says, don't go down that road. Cut it off at the root. Guard your heart. Guard your mind. Guard your heart. Guard your mind so that those issues do not arise. God was saying this to people he loves. Listen, this is it. We're coming in for a landing. If you haven't been paying attention, this is what I've been trying to get through to you. God was not saying to them, I want you to do this because I'm trying to make you good. We already established that's not how this works. He said, I want you to do this because I'm trying to keep you free. Any other choice is going to lead you back into enslavement. He says, I'm not trying to just make you behave. I'm trying to keep you free. So if you look back over all this, I'm the one and only God. I'm not manageable. Don't use my name for your game. Train yourself to trust me every single day. Honor your parents. Respect other people's bodies. Respect other people's relationships. Respect other people's possessions and their reputations. And then honor them in your thoughts too. That's what he said. So my hope and prayer has been before, during, and I pray as this comes to a close, I hope you can see now, like you have not been able to see before, this clearly isn't an acceptance test. Do these things, you'll be good, and I will like you. No. It was a set of guidelines and guardrails to keep the people he loves free. Like I've said through this whole series, you can tell a whole lot about someone by the rules they give and by who they give those rules to. I hope you can see the character of God and understand who he is and how he is more than you ever have before. Because 1,300 years after this, God sent Jesus to rescue all people from the slavery of sin. God chose to do that ahead of time. And that rescue, when Jesus hung up on that cross was once for all time. That rescue has already been done, and that same God that we've been talking about, who was there 1,300 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, that same God invites you to know him and to trust him, because he wants you to experience the true freedom of being free from the guilt of your sin, free to live out the purposes he's given you, and free to live as though your life will never end. So just don't forget who you're dealing with, because you will lose the awe and you will lose the wonder. Here's the big idea. Ready to write it down? The big idea is that God guides me because he loves me. Yes. And he wants me to stay free. My hope and prayer is that now when you open up this book, when you open up this library and you read and you look at some oughts and ought nots, instead of turning your back on God and saying, you know what, God, you're so restrictive. This doesn't feel relevant. I don't like it. You know what I would hope that you would say, honestly, is, God, this is really difficult, what I'm reading. But you wouldn't have said this if you didn't love me. And I'm so grateful that you're guiding me because you love me and you want me to stay free, because at the end of the obedience, I think we're going to be able to say, wow, I'm really glad I trusted the God who would rather die than be without me. God is good, and I am free. Yep. You get it? Good. All right, I'm about to pray, and just like we did last week, we're going to take a time of giving. Like I said about the card, please respond if you've made a choice to follow Christ or otherwise. We're going to pray. Ushers are going to be here at the front. They're going to move from front to back. Let's remain seated until they're past you. Then you can stand up. Worship team, you can come on up. I know it feels awkward, but we will get there. I thank you guys for listening. I pray that this has impacted you in some way. Let me pray. We'll begin our time of giving and singing, and then the service will be over. All right, here we go. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you that you have told us about this, and you did it so very long ago. And yet those words have such eternal, lasting value. We know that it is because of the shed blood of your Son, Jesus Christ, on the cross that we have forgiveness of all of our sin, past, present, and future. It is because he is alive, come out of that grave on Easter Sunday, that we have his presence, we have his purpose, and we also have been gifted with eternal life. Lord, for any of my friends who have never bowed the knee to Jesus Christ, I pray that you give them the courage to say yes to him today. Change our lives. We're going to take this time to give back to you. Thank you so much for your generosity toward us in all these ways, and I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.